You know, I'm no marketer really. As I said, a lot of stuff came intuitively, and we went to the underground. Stuff happened, and you know, we didn't have money to place ads, and we didn't have money to do research. You just do what you know, and go with your intuition, and that's pretty much what we did with the brand. Then in 2000, excuse me, there was a developer, bless his soul, who built a winery for us, a very modern production house. It's no pretty thing with barrels and wood beams and musty smell. It's a clinical production facility. Arguably, it was 2 years ago the best Sauvignon producer in the whole entire world. It made brands like King Crawford, St. Clair, Astrolabe, Jules Taylor, and so on and so forth. So all the wine was made there under our hands. Anyway, so we leased that from them, until Vincourt couldn't help themselves and bought it for us a few years later. We also bought a small piece of vineyard land because supply was getting to be a real problem. And so we had all these companies sitting out there, one hedged against the other one. If this one fell up, the whole thing was going to fall over. But it worked for us because, I don't know why, we took a punt and it worked. So here we were, head office in Auckland, distributing all over the world. Wineries in Blenheim, celladors in Hawke's Bay, and the brand developed its own spirit. And I think it's very much an Auckland brand. It is still an Auckland brand. We tried to fit in with a Hawke's Bay, just didn't work for us, you know. And so it comes time. Also, ladies and gentlemen, when you know your place. And it certainly wasn't there. So here we are today. That's one of my favourite pack shots. I'm just going to quickly talk, and I'll come back to this again, perhaps, before I go on to the... I'm going to come back to this one, please remind me. Just after I talk about the future model. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. So Constellation bought Vincourt, so bought King Crawford. We were out here in Parnell, they outside Murpai, and they were called Nobler, right? And so they offered me a job to turn the company on its head because it needed a fresh spirit and it just needed to look at the world from a market end. So I can tell you that I've been very uptight for the last 18 months, and I found myself managing systems and people and not really giving them the benefit of my experience and not really doing what I'm good at. And it's kind of a sad thing, isn't it, about corporates, and they can't help themselves. And you kind of see, you know, from the back end that it makes sense to integrate all systems and models, but I think thereby they're also killing the very thing that they're buying. Their challenge is, as I'm departing today, to keep the spirit of this brand alive, and it's a challenger brand, and we're going to look at that a little and to take it on. I took the job for a number of reasons. I wanted to understand why they make the stupid decisions that they do sometimes, or what we think are stupid decisions. Because, you know, there's a whole myriad of factors that influence them. We're just sitting with the FY10 budget. It's impossible because, you know, there's a recession, but there's also shareholder return, and then there's foreign exchange that has an influence on it, and there's return on capital expenditure, and on it goes. And in the end, people are sitting with a whole bunch of figures that they have to take on and inherit that's not necessarily good for their brands or their business. So it is, I know that it is bloody frustrating working inside that environment. As I said about the catwalk model thing, they all want to be entrepreneurs, but they can't, you know. And I think in our industry, there's a real, the big companies need the little guys, because the little guys, if you look at the typical, you know, at the sharp edge, they're bringing out all the new varieties like Arnais, like Albarino and things, and really trial things and make Sauvignon in a different style and create categories. And then the big companies come in and are swooping to the middle and grow that category, and then 500 other little companies. What's that thing when you ride behind someone on a bike? Slipstream. Yeah, it's a bit like skiing behind a Kiwi too. So the two need each other. So here's what I think. I think that this is what I'd like to do, because they can't grow those little things, and it's very hard for them. Right now, we've got to also look at what's happening in the world, and I'll just quickly tell you. I mean, obviously, the requirements for a future model is that a strong international distribution and links will need to be there. It is one of our most difficult day-to-day dealings that we have. And across the world, we see consolidation of distribution. I think you'll start seeing it in New Zealand as well. It happens everywhere. And it's the rate limiting factor and the factor that presents a lot of smaller companies from succeeding, and bigger companies from succeeding. I think also that consumers are looking for sincerity and honesty in brands. You know, they don't want something with a reptile on it or those real quick made-up brands. Those things have quick life cycles. But what we've seen is that people are really looking for provenance, and they don't want to be underestimated. Even if they're an entry-level drinker, they don't want to be told what to drink. They look for that strong provenance, people in place, and they look for a little bit of brand creativity and entrepreneurship and brands with special spirits. So one of the interesting things I've learned in the last 3 years as we entered the big wide world of Constellation's distribution in North America, and I have to tell you, it's fantastic. It's like a well-oiled machine. Your brand goes in there and it just goes tick, 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 up, 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 up. You know, they're really good at that. But what we've seen is that there are two sorts of global consumers. Three. The North American one, they are unbelievably conservative as far as wine's concerned. You know, they want it to look and taste in a specific way, and they want to almost be told what it's going to look and taste like. And then there's the Commonwealth. You know, UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the rest of Europe, I think, perhaps takes its own place. We deal mainly in the New World. I have to confess that I don't know the Asian customer that well. I think it's very much an emerging market, but we have to do a lot more work there. So these two different groups. So you've got to find something that sits in between the two of them. And that's quite hard, because you can, you know, have some... Americans don't like humour in wine, you know. They don't. It's almost teenage humour. It's quite blatant. Whereas on the other side, you can actually have some humour and other cues that are important. For instance, for one of our brands, Nobilo, incidentally, is the biggest brand into North America by 2,000 cases for New Zealand. We're looking at a platform, a comms platform as seafood, right? So we did some testing and we showed them something. And I think for us, the Commonwealth consumer, what we'd like to think of luxury is almost digging your toes in the sand, wearing your favourite torn T-shirt, and you know, just be like that. Whereas they like the glamour. They don't want to see, and this our research shows us, they don't want to see how the fish is killed and how it's gutted or fresh from the sea. They want to see it nicely presented on the plate. They don't want cockles or pippies. They want salmon, lobster, because they don't know what crayfish is, and so and so. And so we sit with those two things. We're also seeing, apart from the conservatism and the schizophrenic nature of wine brands that you almost have to have, that with the recession, you know, we've done a lot of work on the consumer, virtually microchipped them, and we know a lot about the global consumer and off the Constellation platform for USA, Canada, Australia, UK, and now we're doing the same research in New Zealand. That savvy shopper, you know, people waiting for the stuff to go on deals, it's fantastic. So there are more of those, so we've got to get the insights of those people a little bit better. But they're also not stupid, they don't want to be